Hello, everyone, and welcome to Picture This, a Big Brother Hometowns a retrospective, Season 6, Chapter 1. BB Pandora is dead. We are back with the start of Volume 2 of Picture This. Thank you, everyone that has listened to the first volume or purchased it and given us good feedback. It's been a lot of fun. I know as we get deeper into this, I think more people are going to get on board the Picture This train as we get to closer to seasons that players in our community that still actively are involved in our community played in. And we're kind of getting closer and closer to that. We're at the point where not only are we at a season where some of our community members have played, we are at a point where one of our panelists here on the podcast played.
Hey.
And that's my co-host. I'm Josh Consalvo. That's co-host Mitchell Stokes. Mitchell, how are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm super excited to be here. Did y'all see that messy girl on season 6 of Big Brother Hometowns? That was me. Hey.
You may not have recognized him with all that hair.
No, really. I had hair. I was I'm a little thinner now, and that's really just the price of villainy, if you ask me. So
I'm gonna also ask a question. That's not going to make air, but I've been meaning
yeah.
Maybe it will. Were you still in the closet during this season?
I was, yeah. And we can leave that in. That's fine.
Yeah.
I came out late, so that was I was still in the closet at that point in time. What a Miss Girl. There was a lot to learn. It's funny because to me, that was 2019 when BBH6 played. For me, I look back, 3 years ago, I don't even recognize that person. Like, I mean, obviously physically, I feel like I look a lot different, but like you mentioned, like was still in the closet. There's just that person is just such a foreign. I know it's me, and I see that it's me, but it's just, I just don't really recognize that person anymore, and I'm happy for evolution and happy for progress and growth.
Sure. I mean, in the org sense of things, I think this season helped you become the player that you are today. And I don't even think he's all that different in terms of player, but you were very bright-eyed and wanting your fans, and you were ready to jump in.
Yeah, it was such a foreign thing, like foreign idea to like play Big Brother on the internet. And I went in and I was obsessed with it just right off the bat. I was having such a good time and had such a blast playing this season. And honestly, it is a really great season. I feel like we always talk about great seasons of Big Brother Hometowns, and I'm always like, my season, Big Brother Hometowns 6, but then you get to it and you rewatch it and you're like, oh yeah, it actually is like incredible. Like I'm very excited to like dig into it and go through it and analyze myself, analyze my fellow contestants on the season, try and give maybe this is my first opportunity to give some insider knowledge to like what was going on and what I remember and some of the behind the scenes things and fill in those gaps. And I'm really excited for that because as I was rewatching this, it was all flooding back. Like I was remembering things that I said and did and that this person said to me and how they went, and I'm excited to get to share that and spill the insider tea a little bit. And
whenever I rewatch seasons, like there are confessionals and like videos of myself and all those moments where it brings me back to where I was in those moments. And now for the first time, it's probably doing that same for you.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah, so watching the season I watched it twice in the last 24 hours, and I like to try and do that in preparation for these. The first time I just want to watch it, bring myself back to it, remember kind of the storylines, the confessionals, all that good stuff. And the second time is when I go in and I try and dissect and make good notes. I will be upfront, and I've already told Mitchell this. In the process of rewatching this, I did text my good friend. And maybe I'm the only one that will claim that because I think a lot of the BBH community has some words for this person. Stephen Moreland. And
what a character! And honestly, what a fantastic person! Like I will say that like up front, I really enjoyed playing with Steven. I really hate watching Steven back in confessionals because it's just not the person that I played the game with. And I think that there is a huge disconnect for me in Steven, the player, and Steven, the character confessional giver. And and Josh, you were saying this to me yesterday via text about like, Mitchell, you would live for Steven if you didn't play against him. And I think in a world that is true, but I find so much of what he does in confessionals to be so insufferable. And I have to just own it for myself and for like, because there is such a huge disconnect between him as a person and the person that he was in that game to me versus the person that he played in the confessional game and how much I lived rent free in his head.
I mean, and you did. I'll certainly give you that. I think that this season you have two people that try and operate the same, but different, and that is in Steven and in Ryan. Two people that want to portray this on-screen persona and do it incredibly well. Both the cowboy thing and Steven with, his like, I guess villain is the best way to put it. But one of them does not always bring that same energy into the game, and that being Steven. It doesn't like Cowboy Marston brings that into the game, and sometimes it gets like sloppy and silly and messy. And but Steven is like,
don't remind me because we'll get there, especially when we get there in season 10. We'll get there. But
but Steven like plays a very calculated game. And is informed by the thoughts and persona he gives in the confessional, but the player itself is not necessarily that like he's just like Steven is just kind of mad scientist-y in his in the way he thinks and the way he talks about the game and the way he processes through everything. And
he had great reads. He has, and we'll talk about. I mean, he has really great reads throughout the entire time. I think honestly, the only person that he really did misread was me. Like, and we'll talk about it more as we go through it. But like, I mean,
I know what you're saying, and I agree in a sense because you weren't targeting him at any.
I never was coming for him
of your time in the game.
I never was coming for Steven. I never tried to manipulate him or like all the things that he says in his confessionals about like Mitchell put me on the block so that he like things like that like are just such like I feel like I was the person that he had the worst read on because especially once Maddie left, me and Steven and Jason were the people that I was like that I felt were the best path, even though I was giving Sarah all the information.
Right.
She wasn't doing anything at that time. She hadn't won any comps. She wasn't, she didn't have, from my, opinion, I was like, oh, this is a great person for me to be connected with. But they're the path it's going to help propel me. But we're gonna get there.
We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this a lot, and because Mitchell played in the season, it's just going to like go there. So the thing that I wrote at the top of this, one thing I do want to say about Steven, and I want to get, I think it's obvious where I'm coming at with this. I think if we had given out awards, Steven's the player of the season, and I think that's like that's a no brainer, and I think that Steven is among the best to never win. We did that list way back when. I think I was very wrong about where I placed him in that one. I think he was he should be much higher up on the list. Anyway, so Steven, when you listen to this, there you go. But the thing that I said this to Steven last night when we were talking, this season, a couple things. So let's talk historically where this season kind of like lands. It comes right after season 5, of course, which was the all returning player season. And this was the first time where we really filled up a cast pretty easily. There were some people that we like some of the returners like Quinn and Abby, we like talked about those situations. But this season got up and running pretty easily. And it's the first season, and you can probably tell in the edit, it's the first season that I edited into episodes. Seasons 1 through 5, one I had tried to do in the moment, but it kind of fell apart. This is the first time that we did episodes in season. So like, and that's the case through season 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 for sure. Maybe even 11.
It was like happening concurrently.
Yes, at the same time. So the storytelling is maybe a little better in those seasons because I'm able to tell the story as it's happening. So like I'm very in tune with what's happening in the day to day, and that comes through in the confessionals. And you can also tell in some of the editing tricks, some of the flashbacks, like the stuff like that. This is my first time doing it, so I was like, I really gave it all I got with that. So
I think it's interesting though because it's edited like a real season of Big Brother in the sense that the Big Brother editors, they never know who's actually going to win. So
right,
they're not able to tell a winner's story, and it's edited in that fashion here in season 6 versus when you went back and have gone or some of the other seasons that are getting edited post the game. We have a idea in mind of where we can go, and now obviously we can as the editor can only show what content you have. And I think the strength of this season is I don't see a bad confessional giver. Now obviously we would have loved to have seen more from certain people, Bree, Callie, Sarah, but even Bree and Callie in their moments, they're not bad confessional givers. They are succinct. They give good, dramatic moments. They talk about what's going on. Sarah is a good confessional giver. She just doesn't give enough, But you have really strong confessional givers in Steven and Ryan, and then I think like Abby and myself also do a great job of giving good content, making it make sense.
Quinn, of course.
Quinn is a great, confessional giver. So this season to me feels so far the most complete in terms of understanding the whole narrative of really what you see is what you get.
Right.
Like season 6, what I think is, like I was thinking about this. Do I think season 6 has some of the most dynamic gameplay that we've had in the first 6 seasons? Not really.
No.
But the story is so succinctly told. What you see is what you get. Basically, I mean, the story of this game is that by day 3, we were set in stone.
Right.
There was people over here, and there was people over here, and then you had Sarah and Steven in the middle. Honestly, is really the truth of season 6. And as you see, the people that are successful and who have a great impact on the season are Sarah and Steven. And they're the ones that accurately and, figure out that they can play the middle and use it to their benefit and to their advantage. So it's just it's a very, but because of the strength of the confessionals, the strength of the diverse perspectives that you get from almost every person on the cast, which is not the case in any season of Big Brother Hometowns thus far, you have such a complete and whole story that is so entertaining to watch. And when you're a first-time viewer, you see the twists and turns, you see the story coming down the track, you see it, where it's going to go, and that makes it very fun to watch.
Yeah. The big and I've set all this up to say this. This season is a comedy of errors. There are so many mistakes. And I watched that last night and it hit me. I'm like, so many mistakes are made from literally day 0 to literally to the finale. So many mistakes are made, and we're going to talk about all of them. So I was thinking about this. Like, we could do kind of 2 things here. We usually do our word association game. We could also kind of do like, what was your first impression association game?
Yeah, I think that's fun. I can give mine as well.
As you, the player. So let's do you first, and then then me. So we'll just go in introduction.
Cue it up for me.
In introduction order. Abby.
I was threatened by how charming she was, and we barely talked, and so I didn't trust her.
Bree.
Who? No, I mean, I didn't trust. I mean, I talked to Bree and Callie, as much as I could, but they just weren't around.
Right. Drew.
Didn't trust them.
Jason.
I really liked Jason. He was a great ally to me until he stabbed me in the back.
Jesse.
I liked Jesse a lot. Unfortunately, he just had no idea what was going on.
Marston.
That is my biggest mistake. but I liked Ryan initially off the bat. He was too shady.
Maddie.
That's my queen. Love her.
Parker.
Yeah, I love him. That's my king. I love him. I mean, I immediately was drawn to the two of them. Like right off the bat, they were the two people that I was most drawn to.
Quinn.
Didn't talk to him ever in that season.
Sarah.
She was one of the best allies I've ever had in my org career, and she was my first ally. So love her.
Steven,
the player that I played with, absolutely adore him and wanted to play the game with him because I appreciated his mind. I hate that he never trusted me.
Taylor.
I did him so dirty. It was my first victim.
Poor guy.
All right, I'll throw it back to you.
Okay.
Through this cast, so we have Abby,
our third place queen.
Yeah. Brianna.
Sure.
Callie.
Sure.
Yeah. Drew.
Really. Drew has no story in this season, but to me, like, and we'll get there when we get there, like he did himself in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Jason.
Big friendly family guy.
Stop.
Per his intro video.
Stop. I'm dead. No, the shot of the beach did take me out. One thing I want to stop, and I want to say one thing about his intro video. A couple months after BBH6, I played Paranoia, which is a game that Jason hosts. And I went into my confessional and I recorded a clip and I called it an ORG. And he was like, Mitchell, don't say that. People will make fun of you. Like, and then I was like watching this back and I was like, excuse me?
Yeah.
like, how dare you? So anyway, I just thought one stupid little moment that jumped into my brain thinking about that. But okay, let's keep going. Your brother-in-law, Jesse.
I love Jesse. Jesse and I get along so well. Like I wish that there was a better story for him in this, because like you saw the seed planted and started to kind of sprout a little bit, but the thing I wrote over and over again in this is poor Jesse.
Yeah, he unfortunately was caught in my tornado.
Yeah.
In the pre.
Oh, he was
pre-journey. So, and I really liked him. I mean, like it wasn't that I wasn't like necessarily after him. It was just he got caught in all of that. Okay, we have Ryan, aka Cowboy Marston, aka Mustache Marston, aka Rich Guy Rye. So get us.
I mean, he's so funny. I took time to appreciate some of his lines in this season, and they are just so funny. He is just hysterical. I love Ryan so much.
Yeah. Maddie.
She got screwed. That's her whole BBH story.
Mm-hmm. Me.
Yeah, I mean, you're right there. You you came in so bright-eyed, wanting your people to stay in you, and I'd wanted you to play BBH for a while, and so we finally made it happen.
Yeah. Parker
was lost without Maddie. Once Maddie was gone, Parker was basically gone.
Yeah. Quinn.
The rest of his BBH career, I mean, his entire BBH career is playing defense, and that's what he was doing this whole time.
Mm-hmm. Sarah.
Was really excited to have Sarah on the cast. I was at her son's wedding like a month prior, and she had just applied, or a few weeks prior had just applied. And I remember her and I talking about like that she was going to play and all this stuff. So that was very exciting. Mitchell and I have already briefly discussed our winner rankings of it all. And of course that doesn't come till the next episode of this podcast, but I think we'll have a good conversation because my opinion is already forming more and more as we've talked about this.
Yeah. Steven.
I remember my recruiting for Steven. I'd always wanted him to play BBH. He didn't really know too much about it. And I remember I said, Steven, I truly believe that you could win this game. And that's when he said, okay, I'll do it. He's like, you said I could.
You stroked the ego the right way. And then he finally was like, fine, I guess I'll do it.
No, he'll own that. He knows that. Like, that's exactly why he said he'd do it, because I told him he could win.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the intro video, the strobe lights, the speech, the calling it Big Brother households, the creepy eyes.
That made me laugh. I laughed so hard at Big Brother households. And I'm so glad you said it, because I was too.
Yeah, it's so much good cringe. Like the enjoy the show, like just the whole thing. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And then last but not least is Taylor.
Um, sweet guy.
Sweet boy.
All right, and that takes us to episode 1. Almost half an hour into discussing everything as we begin this. And as you may notice, it begins with Ryan Marston uttering the phrase, "Picture this." That is not a coincidence. That is where we got this name from. Was Marston's first confessional of BBH6. And here's a funny thing about Marston. You may have forgotten that he's a returning player.
Yeah.
Like, he's played already. He played BBH2. He was a pre-jury boot. He was not that interesting in the season. And we get the real Ryan here, the Cowboy Marston. He says, picture this, a house, but it's not a house. It's a group chat. You know, that whole thing. He doesn't really provide any insight here, but except for the introduction of the character, which I think is important.
Yeah, I think he's fully realized here,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I feel like, spoiler alert, but we're gonna see Ryan Marston 3.0 in a BBH10, and he, does decently well in that season as well. But I don't think he's as much as what we see here as like Cowboy Marston, the character in that season. So this is really like our chance to really soak it up and enjoy, his story. And, I like to come on here and sometimes provide the case of why I think the second place person should have won. That will not be happening this time.
Well, it's funny because I have thought through this. I've thought through this exact situation. And I said to myself, I was like, usually Mitchell fights for the second placer. I said to myself, he won't do that this time.
No,
maybe I will.
Please, I would love to hear the counterpoint, because I truly just don't see one. Whereas, like, because we'll get there, but I just truly don't see one. I mean, there's not to pour it out before we get there, but like the jury was always voting for Sarah or always voting for Abby, no matter what happened. There was no one was voting for Ryan. So sorry, Rye, but like like I can't give you the counterpoint because I don't think there is one here. I'm glad
if there had been one, you maybe would have voted for him at the time.
Probably not. But
no, I'm just saying, if there was an argument, then you would have voted for him, but you didn't. So like, how could you now defend a Ryan win?
Well, no, I mean, I was always going to vote for Sarah. That's
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, had there been a case for Ryan, he would have been, you having been there, would have maybe considered voting for him. But
Anyway, we'll get there. We'll get there. But I am excited that we get a full Ryan Marston story, and it is a great opportunity to look at, like, once again, a battle backer making it very far in the season. That seems to just be a staple of Big Brother Hometowns. But also just like his complete redemption story from coming in season 2, not doing really well at all, and ultimately making it to jury questioning, getting second place. So I think that's fun that we're going to get a chance to see that.
We hear from Drew. He says, "Here we go." That's basically it.
Back to the 8-second Drew confessional.
Yeah, I kind of love it. Then we hear from Quinn, his first actual confessional. He talks about his relationship, and he said this in his intro video. These two things that he knows, Bree and Callie, because they live on his hall at school, and he doesn't have Max in the game this time, which is nice for him, even though he laments having Max. Max, this is the first season with a co-host, so Max was on production for this season, which was really helpful at the time, and we haven't ever done a season with just me ever again, which was nice. So I didn't want to forget to mention that. He talks about connecting with Drew, but his main points here are no Max and is with Bree and Callie.
I mean, he mentions the returners and potentially that becoming something that could help him in the game. And I think, just to like provide some context about the first couple of days of the game, I mean, once we realized there were returners in the game, we were on an absolute witch hunt to get them out. So I don't know if Quinn shoots himself in the foot here a tiny bit by leaning into the returner thing, or what would have helped them? Would it have helped them to like discredit and discard the returners and been like, "Hey, I'm here to play and I want to meet new people"? I don't know, because once Jason and Steven find out that there are returners in the game, they pass that information along to me and Maddie and Parker, and we're all just like, bye. Like, y'all gotta go.
and I think Quinn of the 4 returners does the most actually to branch out from it, and he's trying really hard to connect with it because he has Bree and Callie. A big storyline is gonna be how he tries to connect with Steven, and then by association Jason. So I think Quinn does a lot to try and avoid this returning player target, which was just, it wasn't going away no matter what anyone did in this whole thing, and we'll get more into that. We hear from not Jesse, we hear from Taylor, and I've never heard a more panicked confessional in my entire life. He's like freaking out that he doesn't know anyone, because I think Taylor comes from the Facebook org world, and this is not that. This is the group me org world, in fact. So
is this the last season on group me, by the way?
Yes, it is.
Rest in peace.
The final group me season. So anyway, in the group me community, Taylor doesn't know anybody.
Stop.
Anyway, so Taylor's like, but anyway, he talked about connecting with Jesse and the big Michigan fans, whatever. So that's nice. And we got Jason talking about how he can't wait to backstab everybody.
Can I jump in here and
Please.
say something? This is the first of many points in time where I wrote Jason's name down because he was going to give a confessional, and I ended up taking 0 notes about what he said, because no offense, Jason, I adore you, but I just feel like every time he's on screen in this season, he's just stating the obvious fact of what's going on.
Right. Right.
I'm going to backstab somebody. I'm like, Jason, come on. Give us something.
There's one quote that I will hold on to until the moment that is that personified, but times a million. But I'm gonna wait because it makes me laugh every time I hear it. Then we get your first confessional, which was actually a series of confessionals. I remember you sent 6 or 7 of these short little clips.
Oh, bro, I was going off that first day. Mama, I was sending so many confessionals. I was literally living I was having the best time. That first day, it was so incredible. And I was just I remember I went on a run. I was at my parents' house that day for some reason. I went on a run, and when I got back, I sat down on the steps. I'm sweaty as all get out.
Yeah.
And I was sending you 7 or 8 confessionals, being here's what's happening. Here's what I'm gonna do. Here's how I'm gonna get to the end. And I think for having no concept of what the org community was, I thought I was reinventing strategy, and I thought I was going to be the person who did it in a way that nobody has done it before, and it was so naive. I mean, it was just so naive.
And that's the beauty.
Yeah.
But you talked about you say that Steven had bad reads on you, but he did have. Here, that was a fantastic read, and I was annoying to watch it back. Because you were saying that you want to play dumb, and then Steven comes on and says, I'm so ungodly certain that now, and this is where Steven is over analyzing a little bit. He said that I'm so ungodly certain Mitchell is trying to play me, which was not the case. Right. But Steven does have a good read on you, the player, not necessarily in relation to him, and that's kind of the difference.
I think that's I think a lot of times what we're gonna see, and we talked about it a little earlier. Steven has his finger on the pulse of what my intention was, but then adds 40% onto what I'm actually trying to accomplish. Was I trying to play dumb the first day? Yes. Was I also unsure of what was going on because it was the first day of a group me message and I was talking to random strangers from the internet? Yes, that's what I was saying. I remember vividly being that. I remember the context of it, that conversation that Steven's talking about is he's like, what are we doing here? And I was like, I literally have no idea. You know what I mean? That's anyway. He's pressed for me from day one, babies. Yeah. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. But there is basically Steven's always on guard. Yeah. And I think that is really good. So not everything he says in every confessional is correct, but everything has the essence of true information.
He has that great mindset as a player that you need to constantly be questioning what people's motives are.
Right.
And that is what makes Steven a great player. And it's why he's able to have such good reads, is because he's constantly being why did this person say this? Or why did this person do this? in relation to the game, in relation to my relationship with them. And sometimes he goes off the trails just like we all do. So it's not like I don't think I see anything egregious with his line of thinking. I think he has exactly what he needs to think like a great player.
Right.
And it's why I wish he would play more, because
Right.
I think he could really hone the skill and do something with it.
Agreed.
So anyway,
I'm done barking up that tree.
Oh yeah,
at least for now. At least for now.
For sure.
Get me to BBH 20, maybe.
Season 20, we'll go.
Yeah.
This is gonna I'm calling it now. This reignites the Stephen Moreland spark.
It might.
I'll be coming out of retirement to beat that up.
I think Stephen was very. Yeah, well, please. I think. I think Stephen. Actually, I know. I think Stephen was very turned off by like the type of people that had begun to play BBH, and not that they were bad people, but they weren't his type of people.
Yeah.
They were like kind of the over the top personalities that like make their lives out of this. Mm-hmm. And I think that we've come back down to earth. So Stephen, when you're listening to this, I think we've come back down to earth a little bit in terms of that.
Well, we're not in the pandemic anymore.
Right, exactly. And so I think BBH is more of a game that for lack of a better way to put it, that real people are playing. Again, yeah. Like, I didn't want to say again to imply that people weren't real people, but
no, I think think about it. When we're gonna get here to the stretch where you're gonna see a couple seasons of really, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 pandemic heavy seasons of people who at that point in time, this was our personality.
Right.
We played orgs because we were stuck inside. Right. And I just think he was kind of disenfranchised with that as a concept, and and that's fine. So, but yeah. I don't think it's like that anymore.
Right. I would agree. So we get to the plague, and let's talk about our plague list, which honestly, it's kind of hard to read into because it's early and things are still forming. Jesse gets the safety. Oh, and this is the first time that the plague had been a public plague, because it was just kind of hard to hide who was plaguing who at a certain point. So I was just like, forget it. You got to do it publicly. So Jesse plagues Abby. Abby then plagues Maddie. Maddie then plagues Jason, Maddie never trusted Jason, but they were in an alliance together throughout the game. Jason then plagues Drew because he has it out for the returning players. Drew plagues Steven. Steven plagues Bree, who
it's a miracle that he didn't plague me.
Yeah.
Like, how did I avoid that?
Well, because he wasn't, he was playing nice with you at this point.
No,
he wasn't going to actually do it. Bree hits Ryan. Ryan then hits Callie. Callie hits Sarah. Sarah hits Quinn. And then Quinn plagues you. And now we are at the critical point where there's some interesting story here.
Yeah, and I want to say that there is a little bit of context to the plague order, because by this point in time, BB Pandora had already been formed.
Right.
So an alliance came together on day 0, I believe, like the late part of day 0, which was myself, Sarah, Ryan, and Jesse. And it became, if I remember correctly, it was 4 people who were in the main chat talking about Pandora Radio, and
I don't think I ever knew that.
And somebody saying, "Hey, I'm gonna make that into a chat," and I'm pretty sure it was Ryan Marston, if I remember correctly, threw us in a chat and was like, "Hey, let's talk about music, or let's talk about Pandora Radio in this chat." And then we were like, "Oh, I guess we should be an alliance." Like,
looking forward to the BB Spotify.
I can't wait.
Alliance.
Yeah, and that because I remember I had an alliance during the play. We did not explicitly set out to make one of us HOH, but we definitely avoided each other, and we also, were kind of trying to navigate it to an extent, which helped. I mean, if you notice, none of those people plague anyone else in that group. Kind of throws the ball over, and ultimately, like you said, it does get down to Quinn plaguing me because we had not spoken, leaving me with a choice between Parker and Taylor. And my truth, because again, we're going to get to the next confessional, is Steven saying, "I don't believe what Mitchell says about what happened." Well, what I said to Steven and what I told everybody was the truth.
Which
in
was
that Taylor very much so wanted to be HOH. And he asked me for it several times. However, I had really hit it off with Maddie and Parker. And I was
which in your brilliant sleuthing figured out they were married.
Oh, brilliant. I mean, honestly, I was the first person to figure it out. So you can back off with that one. But, I had really hit it off with them on day 0. And so it was 2 things. I don't think we had an alliance at that point in time. I don't think that the trio chat of me, Maddie, and Parker had come to together. But I was turned off by how insistent Taylor was about wanting to be HOH. And so I went to Parker and I said, Taylor is like begging me to be HOH. I don't necessarily think I want to give it to him. Do you want it? And Parker was like, yeah, sure, whatever, I'll take it. And so I gave it to him. And then we created our trio. Or I think maybe I created the trio at that point in time to talk to them about it or whatever it was. But like it was a mixture of both things. I was very not into how bad Taylor wanted to be HOH. I was, because from watching Big Brother, I was like, you don't want to be HOH. Like the first week, it's really hard to be the first HOH, whatever. So
I mean, someone that adamant and someone you're not in. Like,
I had I had barely talked to, and he was like, give it to me. Literally was the text. I remember it. Give it to me. And I was like, I don't know about that one.
Yeah. So you did not give it to him. You did give it to Parker. No. So Parker begins the first begins the season as the first HOH, but also begins this train of moon HOHs and competition wins.
And I was sitting pretty the whole time. I mean,
yeah, and you were
for the first couple rounds. I mean, our little trio dominates the happenings of what's going on.
For better or for worse, you do dominate in that regard.
Oh yes, for sure.
So then we get this new storyline pops up pretty early on, and this is the first of many. So accidentally putting the wrong thing in the wrong chat, and Sarah, our eventual winner, starts this off by talking about how Taylor was just like a poor communicator in the main chat, and you responded in the main chat also out of a mistake.
Right. It was so funny because we were talking and I was telling the BB Pandora alliance why I chose Parker and not Taylor. That's what was happening. We were talking about the decision and I was like, Taylor really wanted it, blah. We were just having a conversation about what was going on. And Sarah just posted in the wrong chat and we were in conversation. So in my brain, it was just like, oh yeah, just respond to like what you're going to say next, not realizing that it was also in the main chat. And it's just hilarious. Like little silly things like that happen. They're just so funny.
The only one that noticed that you had messed up was Steven, because he mentioned it in his confession. He's like, I think Mitchell also kind of screwed up, but was able to hide it. Like
it's because Steven has his magnifying glass on me constantly.
Hey, he was right.
I mean, he was right.
So yeah, so Marston, this is the first time that it's mentioned. Actually, Ryan mentions the alliance with you two, and Jesse, and so that's obviously going to be important.
And you can see how. I mean, I gave a confessional right before this and didn't mention that chat at all.
Right.
So you can see where that is already lower on my priority list than the conversations that I was having with Maddie and Parker at the time. Because I didn't even think to mention like, oh, hey, yeah, like I wish I had done a better job narrating this season. I learned a lot from being a part of this cast and watching it back and how to narrate your story better. But like, it wasn't even something that for me was important at that point in the game. It was just a chat that I was in kind of situation.
Right. Steven uses the whole mess up as a chance to connect with Sarah a little bit, which is nice. Sarah gives her first confessional where I think it was her first, and she's talking about thinking about how like this is going to ruin her game.
Yeah.
Which it's not.
She was like, I'm going to be on I'm gonna be on the block tonight, guys.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know.
And I love she ends the confessional with, "You hate to see it."
She is so good. She's so. I mean, Sarah's just. I think one of the things that makes her such a good player is she ultimately, at the end of the day, is just who she is,
Right.
and she is her authentic self, and it really translates. And for her, it really translates in text. Like for some reason, you like that as the person that you get, and that's why she's ultimately super successful here. I think.
Taylor talks about not getting HOH and he's bummed about it. Oh well. And then we get a confessional from Jason where he this is the first time we hear him or pretty much anyone talk about like we're gonna go after the vets.
Right.
But like I put it in like I typed this note in like the sarcastic font with like the lowercase uppercase. I was like, put up the vets, like that's like the vibe I'm getting from Jason. He's like, you had your chance. Like now it's our turn to play. I'm like, okay.
It's just so funny because this was not the first game that Jason had played.
Right.
So he knew he had a lot more of experience in this type of format than other people did, but then was like threatened by the vets. I mean, it's just funny. It's ironic.
It's so funny this is such a big storyline because if you look at the final 3, 2 of the 4 vets are there.
Right. And that was what was so crazy about it. Being in the moment is like trying so hard week after having power and trying so hard week after week to get them out. And just through competition wins, through the battle back, through Quentin having a power, we really struggled to get them out. And then obviously you're going to see a point in time where what we were trying to do breaks apart because of the actions of some people thinking it's better for their game. Fine. And then you leave a path open for, for Abby and Ryan to sneak all the way to the end. So it's a very interesting story. They have such an underdog story throughout this whole season, and it's very fun.
Yeah. Parker lands on Taylor and Callie nominations. I don't know if you can speak to that in any real capacity. Just
people he didn't talk to.
Yeah, easy noms.
Easy. That's what I remember. That's what we said. Like, who haven't you talked to? And he was like, I haven't talked to Taylor and Callie. And I was like, okay, work.
Great. Callie wins the POV and Steven ends up with the renom. And this is a whole lot of nothing ultimately. Because he thinks that you were behind getting him on the block so that you could save him and be the hero and all this
insane
stuff. Yeah, it's a bit much.
Because when Parker had to make a renom and he told me the other person that he hadn't spoken to at all was Steven. In my head, I was like, well, I've talked to Steven and I like Steven and I don't really want to vote Steven out. So let me use this as an opportunity to say, Steven, I am going to bat for you, which is exactly what I did. I told everybody that I wanted Taylor out.
Right.
And he was like, I can't believe he put me on the block so that he could save me. I was like,
right,
bro,
I mean, once again, this is that extra 40. He had half of it where yes, you were going to use this as an opportunity to go around and save him. And that is,
I vouched for him because I was trying to, because when you go and play a game, you have to build trust with people. So I wanted him to know, like, that's the thing is I feel like in that instance, he took a very earnest, like me, I'm like, I want to build a connection with you. I want you to feel like you can trust me. And so that we can build trust and play this game together. I don't want you leaving. And he took it and was like, he's an evil mastermind. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. Like, and it's like, that's not what happened at all.
Right.
But what is most interesting about this whole situation is I do remember being like, I want Taylor to leave because I'm afraid that he will come for me because I didn't give him HOH. And if he stays, he was like, he'll be mad at me because he wasn't HOH and he ended up on the block and almost went home. And, so I was like all aboard the evict Taylor train. And it caused this vote is super important.
Yeah.
To the dynamics and the structure of what happens in episode 2 and 3.
Yeah, I mean, imagine that Steven's the first boot of the season.
No, I'm not even. Well, I mean, yeah, that would be insane, right? But like, I'm talking more so about the 7-4 vote.
Sure. And
we don't have a unanimous vote here,
right?
Front. There's a lot of confusion about what happens because of Jesse, who throws his vote on Steven without telling anybody and ultimately makes it really look like the 4 returners are working together and voted together against the wishes of everybody else in the house.
He accidentally exposed an alliance with his vote. Now, is it rocket science to think that the 4 returners are working together? Of course not.
No, but it was like confirmation bias.
Right.
For myself, especially, I can speak. I mean, we know Jason and Steven are hardcore gunning after the returners. But for myself, I was like, oh, wait, this is real. And also because I think context in our BB Pandora chat, which we started to call an alliance, we were all like, we're gonna vote out Taylor, right? Like, anybody have a dissenting opinion? No? Okay, great. This vote is about to be like 10-0 or 11-0. This vote is and then all of a sudden it comes back 7-4. And then Sarah and I are immediately distrusting Ryan because we think that the returners voted together. Turns out Jesse also didn't vote.
Right.
Didn't vote for Taylor. So it was just like it caused a lot of schisms in that particular group of alliance, which is going to come into play later on.
So is that okay? So to get to is this the thing that caused you to turn on Ryan that you talked about?
I think I
know Taylor had to do with it.
Yeah. So I thought, let's save it until we get there but I think what's important to note about this is that this 7-4 vote causes a lot of, it's not an inconsequential first vote like you see a lot of time. This caused a lot of people to question their standing and where they were at in the game because we were concerned about the returners. You had people that were lying. This was the point in time for me personally where Sarah and I became very close because we were like, is Ryan really with us? Or is he giving information that we have and we're talking about to the returning players? It starts a lot of those conversations, and it really does kick off the witch hunt for the returning players, which is really going to dominate the pre-jury section of the game.
Right. And I don't want to harp too much on this, but we do have the Max and Josh analysis every episode.
I skipped it. I skipped it. Yeah, I didn't want to watch it. I wanted to formulate my own opinions based off of what I remembered and what I saw. If you want to talk about it, feel free.
Sure. I mean, neither of us said anything that we haven't really just talked about it. It's too bad you missed the first one. Max celebrates you.
I remember. My ego remembers that. Thank you.
And the other thing I mentioned, I talk about Steven overthinking, and I also talk about how Jesse knew his vote wouldn't matter, but still voted that way anyway, and then still celebrated Taylor's eviction with you guys. So there's a good player in there somewhere. It's just unfortunate. Yeah. All right, so we move on to episode 2, and we kick off, as we do with a lot of episodes, with either Steven or Ryan, and we kick off this one with Steven, talking about him linking up with Jason. He sleuths out the connection of Callie and Bree, and this is another one of these, like, Steven does a lot of little things well, and this is one of those things. You see Callie and Bree, college roommates. A lot of average players look at that and say, that's someone I need to break up. But he says, no, I'll link up with Jason, and let's get those girls on our side. I think that's a really good idea for Steven, especially, and this is early on. He probably doesn't even realize the extent to which Callie and Bree are not playing. Right. And so it's just a helpful couple numbers to have. It, of course, also helps get him in the middle of kind of two sides, but really you have one side that you're on, that he'll be on, and then the other side that's just really dysfunctional and not really working super well. So that's just a little nugget of alliance piece that I think is really good. We get Quinn, happy he survived round 1, was not the first boot. Again, good for you, Quinn. Abby talks about the returning alliance, no surprise there. And then we get a fun little thing.
This took me back because I remember thinking how big of a deal this was. And like now knowing what I know about the org world, it means absolutely nothing.
Right.
But do you want to, sorry, I cut you off.
Go for it.
But it's just, it took me back to that spot of because I was talking with Jesse quite a bit during the first couple days of the game, and I remember he like came and told me this about like there's this drama between Abby and Quinn about like a previous game that they played and how Quinn saying that Abby backstabbed him and Abby saying she just had to vote him out because he was gonna win. Like I just remember it and I was like gobsmacked. Just absolutely like I can't they cast like they played together before, like they have drama, like this is so good. Like this it was nothing. I mean, it
Right.
literally is nothing.
Well,
But
and not only was it nothing, but Quinn and Abby were talking to each other about how they were telling Jesse this.
yeah,
And so this is, to me, it's fun. Like it's a fun little thing to watch and it's entertaining, but I think it's really bad gameplay. And the reason I think that is because these are people that you need to be on one page here, on the same page here, because they are one side here and they need Jesse. And instead of that, it's like, ooh, let's test Jesse. Let's put him to the test. We're going to tell him this, that, and what. Let's see how that information gets spread around. That's a good idea. And you know what it actually does in reality? It actually kind of severs Quinn and Abby a little bit more than anything. It just is one like piece that those two never really like got on the same full trust page in this season. And so it's funny, it's interesting, but it's a small piece of their undoing, not a large piece, but a small piece.
Well, and then a lot of people that ended up finding out about this in the house, ultimately thought they were at odds. So if that was what their goal was, then good for them, good job. But I think ultimately it was such a non-factor for what we all thought it was a big deal, and it ultimately wasn't, and ultimately it turned into nothing. So.
Right. And you come on and talk about the returning alliance which you thought to be confirmed, which technically wasn't, but it's a good read because it's true.
Right.
And then about how Maddie and Parker, you're like really, planting your flag with them, and you're not sure if they know the game well or they're just playing dumb or whatever. But
I still don't know the answer to that question.
No,
I think
on day one, I had like a 45-minute conversation trying to explain to them what an HOH did. So like,
yeah. I mean, I picked up on that pretty quick, and I think I wasn't the only one. I mean, I think you see Steven and Quinn at times pick up on the fact that they're wonderful and amazing people who just don't really know what's going on strategically in the game. And lucky for me, I got there first. I mean, honestly, is what it is. I think whoever got there first would have probably had the same level of trust. They would have had the same trust that they had in me.
Yeah.
So
they are the better playing Bree and Callie, Bobby and Leighton.
Yeah, and the thing is that both of them have what it takes to be good.
Yeah. Maddie, we brought her back. I had her, she played a second time. So in this competition, in this HOH, we do the classic play for HOH or play for advantage. And I do have the list of who played for what. And I even have their scores, which is not that important, but I have who played for what, which is kind of interesting. So it's earlier on in the game. Usually like nowadays we do this a little later as things kind of get figured out.
But it was a cast of 14.
Right, it was a smaller cast, so that's true. What you usually see here is the people that feel like they're in good positions, they play for the advantage, and vice versa. Not really the case here. So you and Ryan and Drew and Bree and Steven and Callie and Sarah and Maddie all played for HOH. While Abby, Jason, Jesse, Quinn, and Parker all played for the advantage. Now, I guess the Your 5 alliance had not been made at this point. We're getting there. Like we're almost there. So you may have maybe at this point maybe had that happening where it seems like at least Parker and Jason are playing for the advantage, and the other three of you, Maddie, Mitchell, Steven, all playing for the HOH. So of those 5, that's about to come to be. You're splitting up who's playing for what.
I honestly don't remember. I don't remember having any sort of conversations about that. So who knows?
It's very possible. So Maddie wins HOH, Quinn wins the advantage, and we go to Quinn talking about him. He's happy he won this advantage. It was called the Cube. It was basically like an immunity idol of sorts. You can just kick yourself out of the house for a couple days and you're safe and you can't go home. And it's at this point, he's listing his alliances, like, and how he alliances or maybe his good connections. And I think Quinn is in like kind of a not terrible spot here at this point, but he just has that returning player thing on his back.
Right.
And probably perception of Quinn, as it usually is big threat, strong player. And so that is ultimately what's going to start making that target bigger and bigger, even though he like probably had decent relationships with people. I just think it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the creation of the 5. Maddie kind of comes to you, Maddie, I guess Maddie and Parker, about joining up with Jason and Steven, which comes to be. So we have a 5 of Maddie, Parker, Jason, Steven, Mitchell, and then you feeling all diabolical. Very excited.
That was such a mess. That was so messy.
Excited that you have a 3 with Maddie and Parker, and then Jason and Steven came to you and said, let's be a 3 within this 5. So you're right in the middle of this 5.
It was right where I wanted to be. I mean, in my theoretical scape, it was exactly the place I wanted and needed to be in the sense of a group. I do remember the context of how this came together because, and I think I talk about it in a confessional after you make the announcement of Maddie being the HOH, but Jason, and by this point in time in the game, we're probably like 3 or 4 days in. Myself, Steven, and Quinn had all figured out that Maddie and Parker were married. Quinn makes an alliance with them, and which I knew about because I had already made one and they told me about it. And then Steven approaches them about making a 4 with Maddie and Parker and Jason and Steven. And I remember they came directly to me in our trio chat and were like, they want to make an alliance with us. And I was like, and I remember telling them, do they want to be in an alliance with you because they like you and they want to play the game with you? Or do they want to be in an alliance with you because you have power? What do you think the answer is? And they were like, oh, that's a really good point. And then they were like, well, we'll just ask them to include you in the alliance. And I was like, well, maybe don't do that. Like, maybe like subtly, if you want that, that's fine. But like, you know, you do whatever. And then all of a sudden I'm in a group chat of 5 people and Steven and Jason are texting me on the side being like, hello. And I'm like, bro, I don't know anything about this. Like, I'm just happy to be here because I was just, I told them, I was like, don't be obvious. Don't make it too obvious that you want me because then they'll think that I'm already in it with you. And I just don't think that they had that lens to, you know, to like, they didn't have that speed and they just did what they wanted, which was to make a group of 5 that included me and Jason and Steven, and they moved on with their lives. And then it was fun to feel like I was in the middle between the 2 groups because that's the cushion spot. And and it ultimately informed a lot of my personal strategy throughout the rest of the game because in my viewpoint, sitting right smack dab in the middle was the perfect spot to be if we could just get to the 5.
Right.
And that informed my entire strategy through the whole rest of the game. Didn't matter who, I was against everybody else at that point. I was locked in with the 5, ready to move to get to 5 because I knew that if I was sitting in the middle at 5, I would be in a great spot as 2 pairs of 2 shot at each other.
Right.
And it informed my entire strategy throughout the rest of the game. I was so inflexible. I was so unwilling to do anything else. And that's why I think mistakes are made going down the stretch, which we will get to when we get there. I'm not going into it right now because I know that you're going to like, I don't want to do that now. But at that point in time, right, I was perfectly content to be right in the middle of that 5. It was right where I wanted to be. And I told Sarah about it immediately.
As you did the whole game. Yeah, we haven't talked a ton about Sarah because she's not in this, but you're just basically telling her everything.
Everything that I'm doing. She had all the pieces. She, at any point in time, could have just absolutely ravaged my game.
Right.
And I don't regret it at all because Sarah made me feel comfortable. as she did with so many people in the game, as she did with Ryan, with Abby, with Steven even. You know, she had so many people who wanted her to do well in the game because she is a very incredibly strong social player. And this is really where I look at it as a strength of her game, where she had all the information from me, Maddie, Parker, Steven, and Jason, and what we were doing. She also had Ryan on the other side, who was connected to Abby and Quinn and Drew and knew everything that they were doing. So she's smack dab in the middle where she needed to. She was actually the one who was in the middle.
Yes, in a sense, yes, I agree with that. And when Mitch and I kind of talked about the like winners of it all, and I am not coming into this like anti Sarah as a good winner by any means. I just not quite sure where she's going to rank for me overall. But we'll get there. We'll get there. So the nominations are Ryan and Drew. This is targeting returning players, and Quinn is now starting to feel the heat. He's like, oh, because he was talking to Maddie and said like, who are the people you haven't talked to as much? And it's Ryan and Drew. And Quinn was like, well, I guess that's those are the kind of people you'd want to nominate. And then Quinn's like, but is this a coincidence or is this the returning player thing? So Quinn is starting to feel the heat with this advantage in his pocket, and he almost really fumbles it, but we'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, Quinn's starting to put some pieces together that he's not sitting as pretty as he hoped to be. Abby, same thing, also feeling the heat, not wanting to be backdoored. She's her confessional is like weighing the options between Ryan and Drew when it really should be thinking about how do I keep myself off the block.
I really don't remember Abby being a presence at all, at least in my world, in my scope of this game. She was either incredibly MIA or she was just very selective of the people that she was talking to at the early stage of the game. I don't know if that was intentional on her part, if she was just busy, but we know from her confessionals that she's connected with the returners, and that's all she talks about. She doesn't talk about anybody outside of the returners. So it's interesting. Like from my memory, I don't remember her being responsive to text or to chatting around. So
yeah, Abby just is like, she gets to the end. She very well could have won the season, but she just kind of gets thrown around like a rag doll this whole season, and doesn't have a whole lot of power or like, autonomy over the game in any point. And I think she is a good social player, and that's what everyone always is going to say about Abby, and that's still true. But yeah, I think you're right. Steven talks about the 5, talks about targeting returning players. Quinn is the only one of those returning players that's really talked to Steven, and Steven mentions that. I think that's important. Maddie wins the veto, doesn't use it. Quinn throws a rogue vote, which has a little bit of implications in the day-to-day of the game, but not in the overall story of the game. People are talking about it. Me and Max discussed that, how and this is it's funny, the person that really sussed it out was Abby, and it's just another thing that Abby and Quinn are just bumping heads, like and getting in each other's way instead of like standing up, looking at each other and like walking together. They just keep bumping into each other, and this is one of those times where Quinn throws a rogue vote hoping to stir something up amongst people that are actually against him, and just further separates himself with Abby, which is really silly. Drew is evicted and is just not really a player in the season, unfortunately.
No, and he really didn't have a shot because Abby was always going to vote to save Ryan, and then Sarah, myself, and Jesse all were always going to save Ryan. So there was very little of a conversation to be had about this vote.
And one thing that I talk about in the like post episode here, which I think is important if we're going to like say anything about Drew and the current, at the point of this recording, end of his BBH career, this third time around, Drew can be a little bit overthinky. And so, we talk about this with other players where they're like, I didn't win the first time, therefore I should do this the second time. Okay, the second time I didn't win, and Drew played a strong game in BBH4, but he didn't win. And so this time around, he's like, maybe I should talk to people less than I did in BBH4. And that's the strategy he went with, and it obviously does not work. That is not a strategy that will work for you in any game that is socially driven. And he pays the price here and rides off into the sunset. We never see him again. And we head on over to episode 3, which opens up with Jesse talking about how this is like the Hunger Games. You see the wheels starting to turn in Jesse's mind, which is unfortunate because poor Jesse.
It's a perfect comparison for what's going to unfold during the course of this episode. Poor guy.
Well, the amount of things that had to happen to get to a Jesse boot here is just remarkable. Every single
boot. Ryan
oh, is this?
This is.
Oh, this is the Ryan boot. You're right.
This is my moment of shame.
Yeah, sorry. When we do get to the Jesse boot, there are so many, and that really does start here. Still, so many dominoes have to fall, but we'll get to that in a second. So we get a great Ryan line here. He talks about how he survived the block, and he says, "Like a drought in the middle of Texas, you can't get rid of me."
Well,
yeah. I mean, still kind of not wrong though, because
in theory, Ryan should have been very safe. Ryan should have been safe. In theory, Ryan should have been safe.
We need to say this out loud and proud. Ryan did nothing wrong.
No, well, I mean,
nothing like
true and
blatantly wrong. Like
Ryan was not giving us any information.
Sure.
When it came to our alliance in the BB Pandora alliance, he would come and he would collect, and he would never bring anything. And we had suspicions that he was running that information back to the returning players, which was not necessarily untrue, but it also was, like we've been saying with Steven, it was an overestimation of what was actually happening.
Right, because like what information is he bringing over there? Like everyone, they're coming after the returning players, and that's the information. And so the problem here is, so real quick, we get a Maddie and Parker confessional together. They talk about how they like Sarah and yada yada. Nothing really exciting there. Jason talks about the alliance.
This is a very important thing.
Right.
This informs everything that happens in this round.
Yeah. So
I'm talking with Jason and Steven, and Jason
runs his
mouth and scares me because he says that Steven and him have Bree and Callie. And I remember thinking, excuse me? What's happening?
Right.
And Jason didn't even think about it. And Steven, of course, was mad that Jason had let this slip. I was scared. I was so scared to the point that I revealed to Maddie and Parker that Jason and Steven had made a trio chat with me. But it also informed everything that happened with my HOH, because I was really trying to build trust with Jason and Steven. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, and I need to put people on the block, I took Bree and Callie off the table for Jason and Steven. Because I think the thought is, if you're watching the episodes, you don't see this. But the thought is, Mitchell, why did you not just put up someone like Bree or Callie, who you've not spoken with, you're not in an alliance with? Why are you blowing up your alliance? I took them off the table for Jason and Steven because I wanted to build trust with them. And because of this conversation where they reveal that they're working with Bree and Callie and they can be a number for us, I didn't put them up.
So I have to wonder what happens if Jason does not slip up this information and you come to that. You were in an impossible situation. You should have never won this HOH.
Well, and let's talk about that. Pause. Let's talk about this. Do you remember what the HOH was?
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
So it was this it's just a crapshooty kind of HOH where there was a number of boxes and you picked one, and if you liked your score, you kept it, and if you did not, you could pick another one, but you can only continue going if the next box you chose was a better score than the previous. Mm-hmm. And something had happened where you were in a situation where you got the 50. That was the highest number.
No, yeah, I picked my first box was I thought it was 100 box. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Whatever
I thought I picked 95 or something like that. And I was like, I remember telling you, Josh, I do not want to win this HOH. And I picked a box and it was a 95. And I was like, well, and in my head, I just didn't think. I didn't.
Right, because if you pick again and you most likely pick a box lower than that,
Yeah.
so you pick 20, then you were done and you couldn't continue on anymore. And so to throw this HOH would be easy because you just pick the next box and you're done.
Right. But I just didn't think about it. I didn't think through the comp. I didn't think through the rules. And I just assumed that I was done because I was like, oh, I picked a high number. I'm done. And I was like, well, I guess that's what we're doing here today.
Right.
I guess I better start preparing to be HOH. And at that point in time, I have an alliance with Jesse, Ryan, and Sarah.
Yeah.
I have an alliance with Maddie, Parker, and Jason and Steven. So that's
which is now extending to Callie and Brianna because you want to save them.
Which is now they're off the table. So the only options that I have to put up on the block are Quinn and Abby.
Yeah.
Quinn and Abby. Those are my two options. It was such an easy choice. I mean, it was great. It was an easy choice. I just zoomed in and made my, made my nominations and moved on with my life. And let's continue the story.
Well, okay. So what I was going to say was if Jason never spills his information, this is the other problem you would run into because you would be like, all right, gang, time to put up Bree and Callie. And they'd all be like, I'm sorry.
Ryan's sitting right here.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened. Was that, I mean, let's just jump there because Quinn wins the veto. Quinn wins the veto.
Well, before he doesn't win the veto, he does not use his advantage,
right?
Which very much should have, and he got away with murder here, but he doesn't use his advantage.
Right. So it's Abby and Quinn on the block. Quinn wins the veto, so I have to make a replacement nominee, and I wanted to put up Bree and Callie. I remember I was agonized over this decision because I wanted to build trust with Jason and Steven, which meant I felt that if I put up Bree or Callie, even though we would have had the numbers to save them, I would have burned a bridge with them, potentially. I also had Jason, Steven, Maddie, and Parker in my ear saying, well, there's one more returner player. There's one. Ryan's sitting right there. Go ahead and put him up on the block. Let's get another returner out. It's easy, easy as easy does, and we'll just go about with our day. And I was in a very tough spot. And I remember this, and this is not, if you blink, you miss it in the finale, but Sarah talks about this in the finale. And she says, and I remember I gave her all the power in that decision. I said to Sarah, they want me to put up Ryan. And I know that we're in an alliance with Ryan. I know that you like Ryan a lot. What do I do? And she was like, I really would not like to see Ryan go home. I really would like to keep Ryan. I don't know. You're kind of, and we both recognized I was in a very tough spot. And I told Sarah, and I vividly remember this. I said, if you do not want me to put up Ryan, I will not do it. And I will put up Brianna or Callie. And she said that she could not ask me to do that for her in the third round of the game. And so I ended up, and that's why you get the BB Pandora of it all. And in my brain, I needed some theatrics to explain why I was blowing up this alliance. Because I didn't want Ryan and Jesse to blow it up on me afterwards. I had to be the person that started this.
Right. If it was going to blow up. Right.
Do I wish that I had done it differently? Absolutely. Is it hilarious?
Yeah.
Oh, it's good TV. I mean, sorry. Like I'm entertaining. I can't say that I'm not. But like that in my head, I had to provide some context to why I was doing this. And I had to be ahead of the game and spin the narrative and craft it as like, well, I never actually trusted this. They're doing this, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, whatever I said. In the video. So it was incredibly tough decision for the third round of the game.
Yeah, and I think you've spelled it out perfectly. Then we get kind of the confessional fallout. Before that, I do want to give the funny moments. Quinn with the clown music, and then
That was
Quinn with the dancing after he wins a very very close power veto. It was like a couple points.
Can I say
please.
one thing about this? I'm sorry. I must stop. I'm probably not gonna stop, but I'm gonna. That game sucks. Okay, but it's right up my alley in that flash game zone. I played that all day at school. I got in trouble with my assistant principal because we were sitting at a pep rally, and he was like, "Hey, can you like go up and like watch the kids?" And I was like, "No, I have to play this game so that I can win this competition." And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "Look, I'm playing a game on my phone right now. And I'm sitting at the pep rally playing Flappy Dunk." And my assistant principal is like, "Girl, have you lost your mind?" Like, so
That's
the
good.
fact that I lost that was devastating.
Yeah.
And it would have prevented so much.
And it was by like 3 points. It was barely.
It was insane. It would have prevented so much like mess that happened. And yeah.
Then we get the fallout from your BB Pandora, and one of my favorite Ryan lines. He's pissed. Like Ryan is like, you can tell he's actually angry, but even though he's angry, he goes, "Greetings from Viva Las Vegas." I couldn't even get through it. "Greetings from Viva Las Vegas," and then he goes on about, "I don't know why I'm about to get evicted right now." Mitchell is like losing his mind, like, and I'm about to go home and all this stuff. It's so good. Steven talks about the theatrics because no one else was like, no one saw this coming, not a soul.
No.
So everyone's like, whoa. And then Jason, like the way I just find this so funny. He goes, "So Mitchell did the weirdest thing." I was like, "What do you mean the weirdest?" Like, such a very Jason line. And, Jesse is shocked about this. Like, you could tell he's like shook up by this. He's like, "What in the world? Like, how did I get caught in the middle of all this?" Steven.
And I felt bad. I felt bad about doing that to Jesse, but I had no choice. I mean, I had to make other enemies. I had to, I was in an, like we said, it sounds lame to say that it was an impossible decision,
right?
But if it was, I mean, it was break up an alliance that's there, or lose the potential to build an alliance with the active thing that's growing, and what do you do? It was a hard choice.
Yeah.
I do love the line from Steven where he says, "That is phenomenal theater."
Yeah, phenomenal theater.
Because he says it with such disdain and sarcasm for me in his voice, and it makes me laugh.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's really good. And so Ryan is evicted unanimously. He obviously.
I remember asking for that. I was like, if I'm gonna put Ryan up on the block, I would like for him to go home.
Right.
Like and that's what I was telling Steven, Jason, Maddie, and Parker. I was like, if I'm gonna do this for us, and I'm not gonna put up, and it's specifically Jason and Steven, I was like, if I'm not gonna put up Bree and Callie, then I want Ryan to go home.
Right.
I don't want him to stay in the game
after all this. Right.
After everything that happens.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. In the Max and Josh segment, nothing crazy. I just talk about Quinn saving the cube and how you were working on some level of misinformation about Ryan, and he was accused of a crime he didn't really ultimately commit. Right. He was not like, sure, was he not giving you like all the assurances in the world, but you were not high on that alliance from the start. So, poor Ryan, but he'll come back.
Yeah. And it's a great story. Ryan and I have a wonderful story throughout season 6 and season 10 of playing this game together. And he is one of my favorite people, even though we get off to such a bad start, off such the wrong foot. He is, our story is very fun to watch for me, as we go through it.
For sure. We head to episode 4 after all that. And Quinn knows, like, back up against the wall a little bit, needs to win. Which he ultimately will not do here, but he knows that he needs to start winning competitions. You start talking about your flow of information, who you're like, that's a big piece. You don't share much with Jason and Steven. You share everything with Sarah, and you share most stuff with Maddie and Parker. And then we haven't talked about me in the television, loud and proud this season.
Yep, very much so.
and talking about the take the money game, which is just the prisoner's dilemma. It doesn't really work. Like, this was Max's idea, and I don't think it was a bad idea, this competition. But it just ended up like rewarding the people that were in like the majority, which ends up being this 5-person alliance. You called the hard hitters. Is what your alliance is called. And
it ultimately results in somebody who was eliminated from the competition being the winner.
Right.
Which is an interesting place to get to in that.
Right.
You know,
I think we were trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with how the competition could end.
Right.
And that's what we landed on, which ultimately doesn't really make a difference as to what was going to happen here at the end, because it's Parker and Steven as the final 2 of this competition. Right. So anyway, now we get our next instance of someone once again putting something in the wrong chat. Another silly mistake. And it's Parker.
Drama.
Parker this time saying that he's aligned with Steven in like the main chat, and everyone is like, Steven's beside himself, Jason's beside himself, Maddie is pissed at Parker, her husband, which is not a rare occurrence, but at least in this game, you got to be able to like count on your spouse to be doing the right things. And Parker screws this up big time, and Steven says something interesting. He like basically knows he has to play nice, and he says he could have had an opportunity to like blow it up. And what he's really referring to there is because him and Parker were the final 2 of the competition, he could have basically got himself HOH to like screw over Parker if he wanted to,
right?
Or what have you. He ultimately does not, because once again, Steven makes good decisions, pretty much from start to finish in this season. And then we get Quinn, who now with Maddie in power, he almost does not. It's a long road for Quinn to finally decide, okay, I need to use this thing, and uses the advantage, is safe from the nomination. And it's funny, in his video, he's like, yeah, Maddie, you got to choose someone else now. Maddie had not submitted nominations, or at least not, it had not been like formally funneled through, because you had to play the advantage before that. I think she actually had sent a nomination video to me that had Quinn in it. But he was like, you got to pick someone else, because I know you picked me, which is funny.
Which and I may have missed this, and maybe this is something that I'm just blanking on at the moment. But didn't Steven tell Quinn that he was going to get nominated?
That is possible.
I feel like that's what I heard in the confessional from Quinn.
I may have missed that as well. If that's the case, then that would make some sense as to another thing that nudged Quinn towards the right decision here.
I also remember Maddie being in a tough spot here as well, because her and Parker were in an alliance with Quinn. They had a group chat, and we saw in the previous, we didn't talk about it because I dominated the airtime, but Quinn gives a confessional where he talks about how he's not sure if he's really fully got the Moon's trust.
Right. Which he does not.
He doesn't, because and so it's a good read on his part, but they're not doing a good job of fooling him, ultimately, is what happens. But I think that in theory, I'm sure the reason that it was tough for Quinn to make this decision was because he should be safe. He's in an alliance with Maddie and Parker.
Right.
He should be safe. And so for it to be in a position where he's like, I don't know if I actually feel safe. And I don't know what Maddie, I don't remember if she was willing to lock in Quinn and Abby nom set, or if we were gonna.
No, she definitely was.
Is that the case? Okay, cool. So I don't remember necessarily the in and out of all of that.
Right. Because this is the first domino that leads to, that really the next domino that leads to Jesse's eviction.
Right.
Because it was definitely always Abby and Quinn, especially because you can kind of like, you can read through the nonsense in her nomination video when she's like, Abby and Jesse, you two are like two of the strongest competitors left in this game.
Yeah, so like, bad.
Please.
I remember too, though, that she and Parker wanted to protect me, and they didn't have a good relationship with Jesse, but also they were like, well, didn't you just expose didn't you just expose this alliance you were in with Jesse? Like, wouldn't that be, it's probably good for us if Jesse goes, because he might come after you. Like, that was definitely a conversation that was had once we realized that Quinn was off the table.
Sure.
And But the funny thing was is that Sarah wasn't involved in that because I was like, no, Sarah's good.
Yeah.
Sarah's fine. Like we're
Yeah.
all good. We're all good on that front.
Yeah. We get a confessional from Jesse from the block. He's starting to realize that Quinn's a really strong player in this game. That side of the house just really couldn't ever get anything going. And wasn't even that they weren't winning, which they weren't for the most part, but just like from an alliance point of view, they really just couldn't all sync up and realize that
Right.
they were being taken over by a group of the house that was, the Steven, Maddie, Parker, you, and Jason. So then we get to the power of veto, which has more intrigue attached to it, more weird dominoes falling, leading to Jesse's eviction. This is just a funny story. Mitchell cheated.
No, wait a minute. Now you're gonna do me dirty like that. That is not what happened. I was disqualified. Thank you very much.
I don't even remember what you did wrong.
I remember.
I do. You readjusted.
Yeah, I did not remember the rules, and I at one point readjusted my stack of coins, and so Josh cut my score at where I had readjusted. I had absolutely destroyed the challenge and would have won had I not done a silly thing, and it wasn't even like intentional. It was just something that happened, and I like moved a quarter with after I dropped the coin on and I moved a quarter. I just pinched it, and then I went about my life.
Yep.
And didn't even think about it. And then Josh calls me and was like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I have to disqualify you." And I was like, "Wait, what?" But then I was like, "But I wasn't. I mean, I'm a rule follower in terms of games, and I want it to be fair." And so I was like, "Okay, cool, I understand. It is what it is." I wish I would have thrown
a fit. Yeah, because so this leads to Abby beating Jesse out by a few seconds. And so Abby comes off the block. She would have otherwise stayed on the block because you wouldn't have used it. Abby probably goes home there. But instead, Callie goes up on the block next to Jesse, and Jesse is just absolutely toast. Quinn talks about using the power. And so this is another story I do want to mention. Quinn talks about using his advantage. And he talks about how when that Steven, like there's this like cockamamie story that was going around that like Steven was actually in charge of Maddie's HOH, and that led to Quinn being an option and all this stuff. And Quinn was like, this just all makes zero sense to me. And that's what led to him using it. But he couldn't he was also
that's why I thought that Steven told him. That's what I, in my head, that's what I was when I was asking if he told him, because it was odd. That was definitely a very random set of ramblings from somebody who wasn't in the game at that point in time.
And so, Jesse's toast. And unfortunately, that is the end of Jesse's run. I would have loved to see him. I would love to see him play again, maybe like a little more informed. I'd be curious what that could look like for him, or just like a lot of players, especially in the early BBH seasons. There's so many players that I would love to see play like a 5-day LRG, like where they're put into a physical house and all they're doing is playing this game at all hours of the day. He's one of those people that'd be like curious what you could do in a focused place. Same with people like Bobby and Leighton. Would love to see them in like a real house playing the actual game. Like what would they do with that? Not that Jesse wasn't. I'm not comparing them, but those are several, like a handful of players that I think that there's a gamer in them that we just didn't quite get, and that's just what it is. And now we get to episode 5, the final episode. I didn't say this at the top. This podcast is going to cover episodes 1 through 5 of BBH 6, and we get Steven once again seizing an opportunity. Another great moment of strategy from Steven. He goes straight to Quinn pretty much after this, when Quinn gets back in the game and is like, hey, we need to link up. We need to, get on the same page here. Because Steven started putting more pieces together. He's like, why is Quinn in good with the girls, according to the girls? Basically, there's got to be something there. So he puts it together that they all three know each other. And once again, instead of being like, wow, that's a group of three that is never going to split up, he's like, no, I want in on that. And if you're Steven, you have to know that Quinn is good at these competitions. You just saw him win one. Like, an HOH is not out of the realm of possibility, could be coming up soon. And it obviously does come this round. And so the timing is really good here. Then we get like a series of kind of flashbacks where Steven talks about how Mitchell give him absolutely nothing. And then we flash back to you saying, I don't know.
You really did me so dirty in the editing of this season, honestly. My edit is way worse than it should be.
I'm gonna have to disagree. I'm gonna be forced to disagree, unfortunately. But we do get the Quinn HOH, and he puts up Jason and Mitchell. Steven talks about the timing of aligning with Quinn and how perfect this was. You are sick physically and dying figuratively in the game. And then this is the granddaddy of all Jason useless quotes. Love you, Jason. But here it is. Jason goes, I was hoping to go the entire season without being on the block, to be honest with you. Really?
Work. Yeah, it was. I mean, for me, I knew I was going on the block. Just nominated Quinn several rounds prior. I wasn't surprised, and I was ready to go about it. I do want to give Steven credit for the confessional where he talks about like timing and seeing an opportunity and taking it, and how that timing of that ends up being the correct thing for him to do. And yeah, I think that, I mean, he does a good job of giving that confessional. It would have meant nothing had Quinn not won, but because of circumstance, it's a very good move. It could have really blown up. I think it could have blown up in his face if he had strayed and nothing had happened, because Quinn was starting to throw everything at the wall. I mean, Quinn, to save himself, was starting to just like go bananas, trying to like to stay and find a footing. And so if he had this information that Steven was potentially flipping, or gonna work with him, he could have blown it up. But because he wins, it's a great opportunity and great timing. So could have been bad though.
And so we get to this is where Quinn's game kind of falls off the handle. Even more so. There was a lot of things Quinn could have done. So like I said, he nominates you and Jason. He could have instead nominated Maddie and Parker, which I think if he had done that from the start would have been fine. Pretty much the same. And he even says in his confessional, I want Mitchell out. He's too big of a competition to me in these competitions, and like I need him out. And obviously not on the same page. Makes perfect sense.
Valid. Yeah, super valid.
And when Abby wins the POV, Quinn, it may have even been before Abby won, but Quinn goes to Steven and's like, I have a proposition for you, and that proposition is I'm gonna backdoor Maddie. And it wasn't even a proposition. It was like, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I need you to be okay with it. And that's where it went wrong. Because if at the beginning of all this, he even says, I would like to backdoor Maddie, I think that he's in a much better position. It was all about how he did this that fell apart for Quinn.
Because he didn't give Steven a choice.
Right,
and Steven
exactly.
does not like feeling like he doesn't have control.
Right.
So and you got to remember, Steven wants my head on a spike.
Right. Yeah. No, this is perfect. This is perfect for Steven.
Yeah, because he doesn't have to be the person to do it.
Right.
He can get me out, which is what he ultimately wants, but he's not the one betraying our alliance.
Right.
So this is perfect for him. But then Quinn comes and says, this is what I'm doing. Steven feels like he doesn't have a choice and saves me not once, but actually twice. Because when Steven wins HOH the following round, could easily have taken me out then, but instead is driven by this, you didn't give me a choice. I want my revenge on you because I wanted Maddie in the game and I didn't want Mitchell in the game.
Right.
That's really what's driving Steven during his HOH. So this is definitely a misstep for Quinn. Nothing that he could have seen coming, because I highly doubt that Steven was like, yeah, I want Mitchell out.
No,
he probably didn't say that to Quinn.
No, I don't think he did. I think he just wanted to like be in with Quinn. And so this just kind of all went all over the place. You were confused.
I was so lost. So lost.
And Steven's processing. We see that. So Jason's just happy he's not on the block anymore. And so I have to so Quinn explains. I want to give Quinn his explanation. He says, one, he's married to Parker, or she's married to Parker, and so we're cutting that duo off in a vacuum. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And then two, she nominated him. Also makes sense. All these things all make sense. It was just the means to the end instead of the end that I think were not great for Quinn here, which I'm embarrassed because in my post game analysis, I'm like, this is a great move. I love this from Quinn, all this stuff. But it's like I said, all the stuff that caused him to get there.
I wrote in my notes, because Steven gives a confessional where he's talking about how this was Quinn's move. Like I said, didn't give him a choice.
Right.
And I said, well, it's not actually a Quinn move. It's a Max move.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, Alexa, replay season 3.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what happened in season 3 when Quinn backdoors. Who does he backdoor in like the third or fourth week? Yeah. And it's like, did he learn? It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
At least here. Also, I want to say I was ready to go home.
Yeah.
Because I spent that whole day campaigning, and even though I knew that Jason and Steven were in with Bree and Callie, I knew it was going to be a close vote because I was 100% sure that I had Sarah, Maddie, and Parker. So I knew I had 3 votes. So I was working so hard on Callie, Bree, and Abby, and all 3 of them were ghosting me. And so I was not feeling good. I was ready to go home.
Mm-hmm.
The minute that this flips and they're like, all right, Maddie, you're on the block, I got a DM from Callie, Bree, and Abby, like clockwork, saying, don't worry, I got you in this vote. And I was like, what is happening? Yeah. I was literally like, and I say in that confessional, I'm like, I am so scared. Like, what is happening? Like, I thought Jason was doing a good job. I thought Jason was playing well. Bad read. I was like, I'm supposed to be the villain. Like, bad read. Like, like it was. I was that. This was the first time in the game I was truly so far out of the loop.
Yeah. And that leads us to a Maddie eviction, 6-1. And I have a question. Was Maddie robbed?
That's a good question. And I think so, in the sense of Maddie's target and her threat level was elevated by the fact that in the previous round, she was given HOH and had 3 comp wins, quote unquote comp wins, before pre-jury was over.
Right.
Had somebody else been given that power and had Maddie not had to scare Quinn by basically like him finding out that she was gonna nominate him, I think I go out easy. I think that this was a circumstantial robbery is what I'll call it, because I should have left here, quite honestly.
Right.
I should have been evicted like swiftly.
Yeah.
But because of that competition leading to her being like, I'm going to nominate Quinn, to him finding out, using his power, coming back, he was sufficiently spooked to the point where he felt like he had to make a move. And it's, yeah, I don't know. I mean, how do you define robbed? I mean, that's part of it too.
I think in season 10 she gets robbed. Because I think she's a victim of circumstance there, but I'm less inclined to think that here, because like you had opportunities to like get in with Quinn a lot better because he was wanting it from you, like, and you did win all these competitions. Yeah, one was handed to you, but at the hands of your husband. So like that's a choice that was made that you had something to do with. Like, I think that Maddie wasn't entirely in control of her full undoing here. I think that I don't know if I can say she was robbed. All the pieces to this puzzle do lead to a Maddie eviction.
Yeah.
If you ran this as a simulation,
Right.
at this point 100 times, it gets there a lot. So I think that it was unfortunate. Like it should have
definitely sucked. It should have been me.
Should have been you,
100%.
but it also could have just been Maddie from the start.
Yeah.
So like, I'm
Very
50.
much so.
I'm less inclined to think she was robbed here.
I
But
can get on board
unfortunate.
with that.
Unfortunate. Then we have the battle back. So a couple of things that I do in this season are stemmed from Sequester, not from the minis. This was pre-pandemic. This was from I watched Sequester before it was a thing, like before it was cool. And season 2 had happened, and the battle back we do in this season is their battle back from that season, where all of them play like a quick mini. Essentially, they vote each other off one at a time, and so you're down to 3. Whoever gets voted off drag someone with them, and that's what we do here. Jesse was the last one voted off. He is in charge of the dragging. He drags Taylor out of the game. And I always remember he'll say, Ryan, you're going to go do some damage. That's what he says in the chat. I think we brought them all into the main chat to do this publicly, like a public lynching or something. We didn't?
No.
Are you sure?
I remember. Yes, I would have remembered, because I remember opening GroupMe and seeing that Ryan was back in the game, and I about crapped my pants. So,
I think you're wrong on this one. I think we did it in the chat because it was late at night. I remember that for sure. We did it at like 10 p.m. I want to find out if we did this publicly for fun. I want to know who's right.
I'm not trying to deny it. I just don't remember.
No. I know. And
hold on. I can go to my GroupMe too.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, it's me, Josh, stepping in from the future just to say that I was right. They did do this competition in the main chat. And yes, I'm only doing this to prove that I was right about something over Mitchell.
So at the end of this competition, Jesse chooses, like I said, Ryan to get back in the game. And we get a great Ryan confessional. He says, I'm back in the saddle. And he said, and then there's a GIF of Ryan that he has that he posts into places where he goes, in the end, it worked out for thee, Cowboy Marston. Yes, sir, brother. It's one of my absolute favorites. And Ryan's back in this game, which is good. Like I'm very glad because, and I was happy at the time. Like I didn't want necessarily Taylor. Jesse would have been a fun option. Maddie was screwed in this battle back. She was dead on arrival. So Ryan is a really fun option. He obviously goes the distance for the most, just about the distance. But it's fun to have the character back. There's a story here. He was screwed over royally by you, and now has there's a lot of implications of Ryan getting back in this game, which is a lot of fun.
And it's great for Sarah.
Yeah.
Because it gives her another piece to use. And I feel like we are having very similar conversations to the what is Sarah doing versus when we did in season 5 where we're what is Greg up to? Sarah's definitely played a very low key first half of this game, and I'm excited to how many more rounds are there? After this, there's probably 6 rounds, and she's gonna be in control of half of them.
Right.
She is definitely gonna be coming into her own as a character and as an important piece of ultimately this story coming into the second half of this chapter. So I'm excited to dig into that because she is playing incredibly well. She's been in zero danger, and she's right where she needs to be. So I'm excited to talk about her path to the win. And Ryan is an instrumental piece in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that wraps us up for part 1 or chapter 1 of this season. We're excited to see you in the second chapter where we will discuss episodes 6 through the finale, where there's going to be lots of hot takes about where the season ranks, where this winner ranks, who gets on the villain rankings, all this good stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of fun stuff to be had in the second part of this. So click on through to that. And for Major Stokes, Josh Consalvo, we will see you next time on Picture This.
Bye, everybody.